So every review that I read or listened to for the newest Sadako film uh, was extremely negative. A lot of them mentioned that the well has run dry, like no good ideas were in this film, or no new ideas, I guess, were in this film, and that it was just super disappointing. Now that was incredibly discouraging, because I was so excited to see this specific one, mostly because Hideo Nakata came back to direct this time around. Now, if for some reason you don't know, but I'm pretty sure you do know, Hideo Nakata did direct the first Ring, and he did Ring 2 as well. I chose to be super stubborn and just kind of ignore those negative reviews. Of course, as I've mentioned in a bunch of my other videos, entertainment is subjective, so I thought other people might not like it, but maybe I will. And I figured I already don't agree with a lot of the critics when it comes to Hideo Nakata. A lot of them say that he hasn't made a good film ever since the first Ring. I completely disagree. But now that I've seen the film, I definitely see where the negative stuff comes from. And I hate to admit, but I do kind of agree with a lot of those reviews. Not 100%. There's a lot of things that I do disagree with, but overall, I kind of get it. For one thing, the somber atmosphere that permeated the first two films, and I guess Birthday as well, is completely absent from this film. And that kind of bummed me out a little bit, only because they seemed to be advertising this one as a, return to form kind of thing. The first teaser that they uploaded had, it's like a remix or a cover version of the theme song from the first movie. So I thought, okay, you've got Hideo Nakata back, you've got a throwback to the old music, maybe they're gonna, really go in that direction. They didn't really do so I was a little bummed, but I thought, I'll get over it. Second, the scares? Well, scares, I wouldn't really say that Ring, the first Ring, has scares, right? I mean, it's a horror film, but I guess they're not really scares in the conventional sense. The scares in this one were just so underwhelming, I guess. I thought they were handled a little poorly compared to, the other work that Hideo Nakata has demonstrated. There were moments where I kind of thought that he was trying to portray, a more Western style scare, which I didn't think worked at all. Somebody in one of the reviews that I listened to stated that, he wished that they would have had more creative deaths. I don't really go into these films for, crazy, Final Destination style deaths, but I definitely see what he means. There's one specific scene in the hospital where a character dies, but I'm not going to say who. And it started off really cool, Nakata was obviously paying homage to Dark Water, which is another film that he directed. But then it's just kind of thrown out the window because he ends it with a very abrupt and mild jump scare. I don't really want to call it a jump scare, but it's the foreplay was really good, but then the climax wasn't. That's a terrible way to describe it, but you understand, right? Now, the last thing that I would say I didn't like was the third act. The whole third act. It felt extremely anticlimactic, and it's obvious that they really wanted you to feel for these characters, and to a certain point I did, but it didn't really make any sense to me, and that's something I'm going to talk about a little bit more later on in this video. I want to avoid spoilers right now, and then save them for later. But now that I've kind of sped through all the negative stuff, there were actually things that I really did like. And actually, I would say that I really, really liked the first half of the movie. I was very happy that they portrayed modern technology a lot more realistically in this one. I was kind of annoyed with Sadako 3D and 3D 2 when it came to that, especially the first Sadako 3D, because the whole time I felt like the technology stuff was super gimmicky and very oh ho ho, this is the modern day, right? It's a little hard to explain, but I did kind of see it as more of a gimmick, trying too hard to appeal to a young audience, that kind of thing. But in this one, I thought it was handled very well. I would say that in this one, the modern technology that they do show or mention, it's actually used to move the story forward, rather than being part of some 3D effect or something. I also really liked the characters in this one, especially the lead character, the doctor. I feel like they were portrayed in a more realistic way too. Uh, you might not be able to relate to a doctor, but she felt very human. Whereas the characters in like 3D and 3D2, they were, I don't know, a little bit over the top, which is a lot of fun. But I definitely preferred these characters, and I did feel for them when it came to it, except for the third act. Like I did mention, in the third act, they did kind of go a little melodramatic, which usually I welcome, but I think it's because the ending itself didn't make sense to me. I kind of was like, why is this happening though? Like I don't feel bad because what's happening doesn't make sense to me. Now, my favorite thing about the movie was the fact that they used a lot of visual callbacks to the old films. In the same sense that they did with the 2018's Halloween, how they kind of used a lot of the same shots just to pay homage, I guess, to the original. They do the same thing here. And that's something that I really enjoyed because it didn't feel like they were trying too hard to like place them specifically. It kind of just flowed naturally, and I don't know, it's just like a nice little fanboy thing to point out, like, oh, I remember that shot, or I remember when this happened. It was really cool. I think because they did this, it very much felt like a sequel to the original films. Sadako 3D and 3D2, they were so visually their own thing that they could work as standalones, I guess, but this one did feel very much like part of the same universe. Now, in this segment of the video, I do want to go over some spoilers. So, of course, if you have not seen the movie and you prefer not to know anything about the plot, just stop watching right now. However, if you have seen the movie, or if you haven't but don't mind knowing a little bit more about the plot, keep watching. I guess I'm just a little confused because, well, first of all, one of the reviews that I watched had complained about the little girl in the film, how they didn't really delve into her character as much as he thought, and he was saying that, oh, it seemed like she was going to be like the second coming of Sadako, but they didn't go that route. Now, when I heard him say this, I was like, oh, I guess the fact that there are Sadako clones was never really established in the films. It's something that does happen in the books, and they're in Sadako 3D. Like, that's they're part of the story in that one, but they actually don't explain it. But then I started to wonder, is Rasen then supposed to be canon? Because Rasen is sort of the film that established that there would be more Sadakos, but then it was retconned, and then they did Ring 2, but if the Sadako clones are in all the new movies, then I guess Rasen is canon. Also, apparently this film was based on the book Tide by Koji Suzuki. I mean, all the films are based on his books, but this one was supposed to be, I guess, an adaptation of Tide, which I have not personally read. That's actually it's the only one that hasn't made it to the States, so hopefully soon. But I did read like a very brief synopsis of the book on the internet, and I don't know, it seems like this was very loosely based on the book. I have to wonder if the next thing I'm going to talk about was maybe fleshed out a little bit better in the book, but this is pretty much the last thing that I didn't like about the movie. Towards the end of the film, they find a cave in Sadako's hometown that's right in front of the sea, and there's quite a bit of folklore surrounding this cave. For years, it has been used as a way for mothers to dispose of their unwanted babies. So basically, they would take their baby to that cave, leave them on the floor or in a basket, whatever, and they would do this on specific days, because when the tide would come in, it would wash the baby away, and, well, I guess they thought their problems were solved. So it's established that Sadako uses the souls of these unwanted babies. She like sort of feeds on them. And it's also revealed that her mother, Shizuko, tried to dispose of her in this same way. Of course, Sadako being Sadako, with her abilities, she ended up surviving. So of course, Shizuko ended up keeping her. But then they don't explain what she's using the souls for. Like, yeah, she's feeding on them or whatever, but for what? And in the very end, it seems like the little girl is in trouble, I guess. Like, the lead characters are in the cave trying to save the brother. Meanwhile, the little girl is still in the other town in the hospital. She's, like, comatose. And it's not really stated, but I guess Sadako was trying to get her soul, which didn't make any sense to me, because if she is one of the Sadako clones, why does she want her soul? The whole point is that the Sadako clones are supposed to go out into the world, you know, like she's not supposed to take them back. And it's not like she's collecting souls so she could get powerful enough to be reborn, right? Because that's what the Sadako clones are. They're her, reborn. So anyway, in the end, it turns out that the lead character and her brother, they did sort of feel very abandoned as kids. So in the end, Sadako ends up taking the brother, and then the little girl gets saved. But again, you know, I would have felt emotionally invested in that scene because, like I said, I liked the characters. But because it made no sense to me that they would need to do that to save the little girl when the little girl herself is Sadako, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. And to top it off, you think the lead character makes it in the end, but she doesn't. She gets killed at the very end as well. And so then you have to wonder again. So if Sadako, you know, if she doesn't care and she's just going to go and kill whoever, why did the little girl get saved? And why was she in trouble in the first place? It's all very strange. Like I said, I don't know if the book Tide maybe fleshes out these ideas a little bit better. I don't know if they changed all of that from the book. I guess really I felt disappointed because there didn't really seem to be like a clear goal. So once the credits started rolling, I just felt indifferent. So yes, unfortunately, the new Sadako film was a bit of a disappointment. I would still recommend it to people that are hardcore fans like myself. I would still recommend you watch it, especially for the first half. Like I mentioned, I really did love the first half of the movie. I think it's at least worth checking out for that. But also, I'm sure you would just like to add it to your collection anyway. The version I got is actually the Chinese DVD. For some reason, I couldn't find the Chinese Blu-ray, but the Chinese DVD is the only one that has English subtitles. So if you're looking for a copy, I would recommend that one. The most upsetting thing is that, you know, there are certain expectations when you bring Hideo Nakata back into a franchise that he was famous for. Had someone else directed this film, I of course would have still been disappointed, but not as much. Anyway, if you have anything to say about the film or have any questions about the film, let's talk about it. I honestly could talk about this series all day, every day. Well, maybe not every day, but I could definitely talk about it for a long time. But until next time, sweet screams, everyone.